Welcome to episode 184 of the Half Point Per Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by my co-host, Dalton Willie. Let me tell you, Dalton, I think this week might break the record for amount of 12 personnel fantasy football lineups we see. It is a travesty out there right now.
It is one of the most disgusting weeks in recent memory I can think of, between bye weeks and injuries and backup quarterbacks who I'm going to rely on.
The NFC West, everybody but the 49ers has a bye, which is weird. Lions have a bye. Jags have a bye. Like, there are a ton of key guys on bye. I think it's 6 teams in total, which is, kind of tough to have it happen so early, but you would think, oh, it's early enough. Injuries haven't caught up with us. Oh, buddy, the injuries have more than caught up with us. So we're going to talk a little start sit. We're going to talk some regression candidates, positive and negative. I know I left Who's That Pokemon on the rundown. I hope you didn't prep that. Because
I did not.
Okay, good. Because no, Who's That Pokemon. Where we're going to start, though, is a couple start sits. And, of course, if anybody pops in with a question, we'll get to those as well. First one, Chuba Hubbard. And I think what we're going to find out, Dalton, I guess, we'll see. I think what we're going to find out is it's going to be really hard to bench anybody with a pulse this week. And I think it's like, I'm kind of thinking about this week as the Chuba line. Like, if you're at or above the Chuba line, I think you're starting. And like, he got over half the snaps last week. He and Rico Dowdle pretty much split down the line. Carries and touches were almost the same. I think Rico Dowdle had 1 or 2 more touches. Of course, Rico, more yards than Chuba. And just, it's funny, the advanced numbers that loved Chuba so much last year, it's not going so well in that regard this year. He did play through a calf injury, so he had kind of that weirdness for a game or two, but it just hasn't been the same guy so far this year. With that said, like, this week, 6 buys, injuries. I don't know how you can bench a running back who got the volume he did last week. And I think especially without Bryce Young, but even with him, but especially without, they need to be a 2 running back offense. They need to run the ball, and they can do that effectively still, at least.
Yeah, they also get a really plus matchup in the Bills defense that's been gashed by the run, going back to against the Saints, against the
Ravens. Just got to keep that game script within some kind of respectability.
Yes. So I like the matchup for him. It's probably a plus matchup, especially considering, like you said, all the bye weeks and injuries we're having right now. So he's definitely a start for me, and I think it's a pretty confident start. Him and Rico Dowdle, I would probably be starting this week because we're just taking shots at the dartboard right now.
Yeah, for this week, it's a confident start. In general, I don't feel like super confident about it. Obviously, I have him in our Dynasty League. I don't think I'm going to end up having to start him because I think Bucky Irving is out, so Rashad White can slide back in there again. But I wasn't feeling fantastic about having to start Chuba this week. But I think a lot of people probably are going to have to. So if you've got him, unless you've got another top 24 option at a position, you probably got to run him out there. Next guy who, I don't know, Dalton, is Isaiah Pacheco below or above the Chuba Hubbard line for this week?
He's below. I am sitting him. Averaged out at about 40% snap share per game over the last 3 games for the Kansas City Chiefs. Brashard Smith is getting more involved. Especially
to be clear, though, like, and I know you know this, but for people who maybe don't, Brashard Smith got all of the garbage time, and the Chiefs did not pass the ball in the 4th quarter. So that tilts things a little bit, but yes, even before that, he is getting more and more involved.
Yeah. Well, the only thesis for starting Pacheco has been he's better than Kareem Hunt, which he really hasn't been in short yardage, or maybe he'll get some goal line work, which he got last week, and then he has another receiving touchdown off of that. But 2 times in the red zone last week, the Chiefs ran sweeps to Rashee Rice. And it seems like Rashee Rice is the red zone solution to Kansas City right now. I think he had like 4 targets in the red zone for Kansas City in 3 quarters of football. So I just don't know where he's going to get his work. He's not explosive enough that you can't be like, well, even if he's just between the 20s, he'll get 60 yards here or there. He's not good enough for that. So he is like a low end flex 4 play for me. Like he's solidly in the camp where I don't want to be starting him and is eking towards that roster clogger for me.
I think Rashee Rice, I think he ran 16 routes and had 10 targets the other day,
That is correct.
Which is just absurd. Don't expect either of those to continue quite like that, but he will clearly be the top option in the passing game, no doubt. I changed my mind on this like 4 times, including twice like on my drive home from work. I was thinking about this. This is the one that's really been eating at me all day thinking about this podcast. I'm gonna say start, and this is fully a byproduct of this week. Like, again, any running back with a pulse, you probably should start this week. This is not like a blanket you must start Isaiah Pacheco, but if you've got him, you got to at least have somebody somewhat decent. Like, I'm not just starting like the tight end 16 over Pacheco, like even like the tight end 11 or 12 confidently over Pacheco. Is he the Chiefs short yardage guy? No. Is he their passing down back or the guy that even gets targets? No. But he has looked better the last couple of weeks, especially in runs under center. And maybe you'll luck into a 10-yard touchdown. Like, you are probably looking at 5 to 7 points and praying you get 11 to 13 instead. And you know what? This week, that's good enough for me. This week, that's good enough in a 12-team league to start him and feel like crap about it. But you know what? That's kind of the name of the game this week.
I was just doing some quick math for fun. So the tight end 16 is Kyle Pitts, who has a total of 49.5 points per game, but in total, but has had a bye. Pacheco has 49.8 without a bye. So in fact, Kyle Pitts has been the better start.
That's hilarious that I accidentally just nailed Pacheco's crossover point off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but I can't. There's one thing I know about this Chiefs offense. They are going to move the ball and they're going to score points. Falcons offense, I don't know what I'm getting any given week. At least with Pacheco, I feel pretty confident that I'm going to get like 5 points right now.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts had 5 points every week, but 1 week.
Yeah. Okay. Juwan Jennings. And like on the surface, I think this one seems like, yeah, start Juwan Jennings. There's no Ricky Pearsall. Like, we're in bye week hell, like you've been saying, but I'm not about it with Juwan Jennings this week. I'm saying I'm saying he's a bench. Like, he is playing extremely injured. 5 broken ribs or cracked ribs, I think is what it is. Outside of CMC right now, this offense is extremely unpredictable and very spread out as far as who is getting the ball. Like, George Kittle came back last week, didn't get a single catch, maybe even not a single target. I don't know. I'm sure that will remedy itself this week. Like, he's playing injured. The offense is unpredictable outside of CMC. He's had under 35 yards every game but one. And in his one game, he went 10 for 89 and 1 touchdown. He's been a bust every other game he's played this season. It's tough to roll a guy out there when you know he's playing at way less than his best, unless like health-wise, unless he's a stud. And I just don't think Juwan Jennings is there. And even in this week, I think you can find other receiver options I would prefer.
Yeah, it's also going to be a really ugly game. They're playing the Houston Texans. You obviously have the Stingley matchup. I don't think he's going to shadow Juwan Jennings, but he'll see a pretty good amount of Derek Stingley. And you throw in the offensive line woes, the number of times Mac Jones has been getting hit, and that defensive line for the Texans. It's just going to be a really ugly game, I think. So I'm actually with you, and I have Juwan Jennings as a sit this week.
Next guy up, I'm a little surprised that we both agreed there, because at first I was like, oh, he's going to be a start. And I was kind of looking, I was like, can't do it. Next guy, Tez Johnson, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. who might have the funniest like anecdotal story of anybody in the NFL this year when he thought the MVP chance and he scored his first touchdown were for him. I mean, just on that alone, he's got to be a start this week, right, Dalton?
He actually is, which is kind of disgusting.
Yeah,
because when I first looked at this list,
he's a start for me as well.
I was just like, well, there's no way. And then they play the Saints. Chris Godwin's out. Mike Evans out. Amika Ibuka's banged up.
Yep. Bucky Irving, I think, also out.
Yes. And you just put all that together, and it's like, well, Baker Mayfield has kind of proven at this point that he can shoulder the majority of that offense himself. The Lions matchup was a little harder for him. But all in all, like, I'm just putting it on. This guy's going to be able to get some targets. Cade Otton also a sneaky start this week because he's just getting work over the middle. But yeah, Tez Johnson is a start for me, which didn't think we'd be here.
Yeah. I mean, he has he hardly played the first 3 weeks of the season. The last 3 weeks, he has either 50 yards or a touchdown in all of those games. Last week, obviously, Mike Evans gets hurt in the first half. The dude has 9 targets in that game, and he's kind of the big play guy in this offense right now. I mean, 25% and 32% of their air yards the last 2 weeks. He also has 40% of their end zone targets. He's made a couple of really nice catches like one nice catch on the deep ball where he like somersaulted in, and then had the play on the screen pass where he made like a really nice move at the goal line. So he's just fun player, pretty solid player, getting volume from a good quarterback. Like that's kind of all you can ask for at this point at the receiver position this week. And he doesn't have 5 cracked ribs.
Yeah, which that's where we're at with this bye week is he doesn't have 5 cracked ribs and he plays a bad defense. So put him out there and see what happens.
Yep. Okay. Next up, this is less of a start sit and more of just like, let's tell people what in the world to do if they're faced with having to play a backup quarterback this week, which if you're a super flex, definitely probably happening. Even if you're not, there's a decent chance that you have to start one of these guys this week if you're in a league where people roster more than one quarterback. We've got Mac Jones. Now, of course, we don't know for sure what Brock Purdy's status is, but for the sake of this, let's say Mac Jones is the starter. You've got Marcus Mariota, who is starting against Kansas City. You have Andy Dalton, who not 100%, but Bryce Young sounds like he probably should not play this week. High ankle sprain. I would advise him to take a week at least. And Mr. Carson Wentz, who, boy, we really played the hits with Carson Wentz last week. Did you rank these guys like 1 through 4? Did you just pick one favorite? Doesn't really matter to me. However you want to do it.
I just picked a favorite, and I just went with my namesake here. So I went with Andy Dalton.
That's so funny. I ranked him, and he's last on my list.
Oh, wow. That is a discussion point for us. So like I said, this Bills offense or defense is pretty beatable. Even Spencer Rattler had a good day. I didn't even consider Carson Wentz because of how close we are to tip off that I was like,
that's fair.
It's not even worth discussing it. I went through kind of my concerns about the 49ers and playing that Texans defense. And then Mariota is playing Kansas City, and he would be my number 2 for what it's worth. But that came down to the amount of open pockets that Kansas City is given. And I think there's a pretty high upside for Mariota to have like 60 or 70 yards rushing on Kansas City.
Yeah, he'll probably run the ball some. I have him, if we're taking Wentz out, which is totally fair, I have him too as well.
So is your number 1 Wentz?
Well, Wentz was my 2. Now we'll just strike Wentz from the record here. Mac Jones is actually my 1 if he's the starter, just because like I think all these guys kind of suck, but Mac has actually played okay this year. And I mean, the 49ers have shown us time and time again that system, like they're just going to move the ball. You at least have a floor with Mac Jones, which if I'm putting somebody of this caliber in, I'm just looking for a floor. I'm not looking for a ceiling at this point if I'm digging this deep for quarterback. I don't know how you feel kind of about that perspective, but I would so much rather at least lock in 8 to 10 points that like Mariota could get you 2 points if things go truly wrong in Arrowhead, or like Andy Dalton could totally do the same. So I just think Mac Jones with this offense, with the the system around him has a nice enough floor and has shown an okay ceiling to where he's number one for me.
Yeah, my concern is we're talking about floor with Mac Jones, who put up 5 points against the Atlanta Falcons, which isn't very pretty. And this Houston defense is just so good. That's really my biggest concern. And I think I probably have a Carolina Panthers problem with the way I talk about them in the offseason during the regular season, where I'm like, I feel like we're almost there with something. That the Panthers are currently plus 300 against the Bills, and I might sprinkle a little bit on that money line just to see.
Oh my God. Not that we would endorse gambling.
Well, this is an NFL podcast, not an NBA podcast, Evan.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's jump into the regression, guys. We've each got 3 positive and 3 negative regression players to get through. I'll start us off because I'm going to start off with like the annual trade away guy, the annual negative regression guy that always comes up for us. I wasn't going to put DeAndre Swift on here, but he's had 2 back-to-back very good games, and I just see people talking about him almost like, well, maybe it's like the goofy meme, you know, like it's like, well, maybe this time it's going to last, and it's just not. Got like he's not going to go from what he is now, which is the RB13, to unusable. That won't happen. He'll be a top 24 to 30 running back the rest of the season, I think. Like, solid offense, good running scheme, you know, very good coach, all those things. But Kyle Monangai was kind of my takeaway from that game the other day. I know Swift had a great line and had a couple of, you know, nice runs. Kyle Monangai kind of caught my attention, and I think he could be an interesting player down the stretch. I also think like this is a team that has been in the running back rumor mill. This is me kind of trying to protect people from that side of things too. This team could easily trade for a running back, and then the second that room gets crowded, I am so out on DeAndre Swift. It's not even funny if that were to happen. The biggest thing, though, you just look at every year with DeAndre Swift. Almost every year, except his rookie year, funny enough. You look at weeks 1 through 7, and then weeks 8 through 17, he is worse, weeks 8 through 17. Last year, it was very close, RB18 to RB19. 2023, RB8, the first chunk of the season, RB17. The second chunk, 2022 is a little weird. You have to do points per game because he missed some time early in that season. He was at 15.6 points per game. His first 7 weeks, 11.9 points per game. The rest of the season, 2021, he goes from RB3 to RB20. And then his rookie year, like I said, 23 to 20. So he actually improved. We've just seen coaches get tired of this guy time and time again, including literally the guy that's his head coach right now. Like, he has enough raw talent where he's going to make plays. He'll be a top 24 guy. I just don't want to be banking on him being anything more than that. And he's like the ultimate sell high right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the annual DeAndre Swift conversation for us at this point, where we advise that everybody go out there and trade him while he still has value. Kyle Monangai did look really good for the Bears last game as well, so I agree with that. He's kind of an exciting rookie. And this is a team that really does want a playmaker in there. They've adjusted their entire scheme to fit DeAndre Swift throughout the season. When DeAndre Swift is on the field, 90% of their run plays are outside zones. And that's because this is a player who struggles to find things on the inside zone. Going back to last year, I believe there was like a lot of inside zone running in the Ben Johnson scheme. And I'm pretty sure he's just not opening up that playbook because of the limitations that he has at running back with DeAndre Swift. And Kyle Monangai still does right now leave a lot to be desired anyways.
Yeah. Kind of looking like he could sell into the David Montgomery role. Everybody wants to make these 1-for-1 role comparisons. There's one for you. Okay. Who's your first negative regression candidate?
My first negative regression candidate is Michael Pittman Jr., who I think is just kind of playing a little over his skis right now. He's the wide receiver 10 in fantasy points. In spite of that, he's 35th among wide receivers in targets and 26th in wide receiver in red zone attempts. In the last 3 games, he only has 2 total red zone attempts. The majority came in the first 3 games. The important thing to delineate there is in the first 3 games, Tyler Warren had 0 red zone targets, and since then he's the team leader in red zone targets. This is still an offense that I have questions on. A lot of their efficiencies are coming out of how they're getting their run game going, and when and if that stops, I'll be interested to see if Daniel Jones can keep that up. And Michael Pittman is one of the prime beneficiaries of some of the efficient metrics that Daniel Jones is leading the NFL in. He is second on the team in targets now, second to Tyler Warren. And he's only 3 ahead of Josh Downs. Despite that, their fantasy points are like 50 points apart. So I just think there's a lot of points to Michael Pittman's game that indicate there's probably some regression coming. And if you could sell him now with his, top 10 current fantasy position, I think you could get some pretty good returns on it. If there's a desperate player out there who's had Bucky Irving on IR for the last 3 weeks, that's a trade I would make 9 times out of 10 for it. But overall, I would be looking to get off Michael Pittman before 1, the Colts train stops, or 2, some of these regressions just catch up to him.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually talking with somebody about this the other day. Like before this week, I just kind of assumed that this year's Colts is just last year's Vikings, which was the previous years or maybe 2 years ago, New York Giants. Like the train kind of goes on and on, but they looked damn impressive. I know the Chargers have been a mess, but they looked impressive against the Chargers, and that offense through 7 weeks is not just good. They are like historically good. So I would have some hesitation selling somebody off of an offense that's been this good, because that's what you want. You want guys, obviously, in situations like Michael Pittman Jr.'s. And I agree with you though. Like Tyler Warren and Jonathan Taylor are the bus drivers here. Michael Pittman is a good player, but those guys are just better than he is. So like, if you can sell him kind of at that apex wide receiver 1 or close to it value, I agree with you. I think he's going to drop off a little bit from that, but I don't think he's going to meaningfully drop off. So it would have to be, a pretty nice package you're getting back. Obviously, if it's Bucky Irving, it is.
Yeah, and I think he belongs closer to like the wide receiver 18 to 24 range. And that's kind of where I think his real apex is, and that we're just seeing players around him with similar yards per route run metrics, targets per route run metrics that just aren't getting the conversions that he's getting right now.
Would you trade him for Chris Olave straight up? The guy who up until the last 2 weeks, every metric was like, okay, this guy is historically far apart. If you look at volume and all of that stuff, and then, expect his expected fantasy points, like he was so far underperforming. Last 2 weeks, he has almost 200 yards, has a couple touchdowns, is all of a sudden like a top 12 PPR wide receiver. Would you rather have Olave or Pittman the rest of the way?
Why do you do this? Spoiler alert.
Yes. Oh, no.
I would, and we'll talk about that player a little later in the show.
Olave has already positively regressed. I'll be interested to hear how much more he can positively regress. This guy next up for me, if he's not on your list, he's a guy I could easily have seen you putting on, because you've been pretty anti Dallas Goedert over the years on this podcast. I feel like not really like as a player, but just the Philly situation and kind of his role there. I've got Dallas Goedert as a regression candidate here. He is, I think he's like tight end 4. I don't remember the exact number right now. He's been the focal point of that offense through the first couple months of the season. He's first among tight ends in touchdowns, 3rd in receptions and target share, 4th in ADOT, and 5th in targets per route run. Like, I'm still lukewarm on what's going to happen with the whole AJ Brown thing. He has these flashes where he made a long play the other day. I don't know, like, if we're getting previous year's AJ Brown back at any point this year or not. I haven't seen anything to suggest to me that we are. Devontae Smith, like, awesome player. Saquon Barkley, I still think he looks like the exact same guy we talked about, the offensive line kind of being the bigger culprit, or at least I mentioned that. I still do believe that. I think the O-line, as it gets healthier and hopefully as the offense continues to kind of figure some things out, we'll figure out how to shake Saquon loose a little bit more often. I mean, like, if Goddard keeps up his pace right now, he's already tied his career high in touchdowns for a season with 5, which not a ton. Like, it's not crazy to think that a tight end like him could catch 8 touchdowns, but 7 games, he has 5 touchdowns. I just expect that to slow down quite a bit, especially like think about how the Eagles get most of their touchdowns inside the 10-yard line. He's had a couple of long touchdowns, and he can't do that because he's an explosive player for a tight end. But Hurts has thrown 11 touchdowns this year. 5 have been the Dallas Goddard. And I just think we're going to run into more of the issue that has been there in previous years for Goddard, and that he's the 3rd option in the passing game, 4th option on this offense, and the quarterback runs the ball a lot. I fail to see a path where this guy's a top 6 tight end from this point forward.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I've never been a big fan of Dallas Goedert's game. When he's playing well, it's usually a symptom of their rest of their offense failing and games where they're not really playing optimally. To be completely honest with you, I don't have a single tight end on this list because I went and looked at the tight end scoring, which is how I started breaking it down. I was like, the highest score is 13 points per game.
Yeah.
I don't even want to touch his position right now. And Dalton Schultz is also like one of the easiest regression candidates in football. Or sorry, Jake Ferguson. I always confuse the two Texans.
Well, what they Schultz used to play in Dallas too.
Yeah.
So understandable. Okay. Your next guy, unless you have something else you wanted to add on Dallas.
No, I'm all good on Dallas Goedert. Screw that guy. Up next.
Okay.
I have this is very unfortunate for White Boy Summer, but I did have to put Cam Scatterbo on here.
It's so funny. He was on my list and I deleted it because I thought, like, in my mind, I'm like, this makes total sense. He's just not going to keep it up. But I had a tough time formulating the argument. So let's hear your argument for why he's going to regress.
Yeah, so he's tied for 3rd in running backs in total touchdowns scored. So that's my first concern because this Giants offense is getting by and they're not doing it as efficiently as it would look. Like the Broncos game, they looked really good offensively, but it comes out to they only converted 30% of their 3rd downs, which is near the league low. And they were getting by on a lot of big plays from Jackson Dart. The Giants finished out as the 5th highest explosive play rate offense last week. And throughout the season, that's kind of what they're surviving on are these wild plays. They're also 2nd in the NFL in first downs awarded via penalty, which seemed to be really surprising to me. But that's how they're moving the ball, are either explosives or penalties. And both of those are pretty inconsistent, especially with some of their weapons you have there.
Yeah.
And Cam Scatterbo is their grinder. He's getting a lot of yards after contact, but he is not getting a lot of first downs. Among qualifying running backs, he is 31st out of 40 running backs in average first down gained. So it's just you put all this together and the offense isn't moving well. He has a high amount of touchdowns, and I don't think this is an offense that will continue to score at a high rate. And the way that they're moving the ball down the field is really inconsistent that I find it hard to rely on him at the current RB11 price tag that he's in at. That I think he's somewhere around like RB 18 to 24. And then there's the resurgence of Tyrone Tracy, who's kind of reestablished himself as a player who can be a playmaker for them. I think Cam Scatterbo is the RB1 rest of season, but Tyrone Tracy is going to be like a thorn in his side as we continue because Tracy has his own benefits. We've talked about how he's probably not an every down back, but he's a back who can play consistently for them.
I have a guy in my head who I want to ask so badly if you'd rather have him than Scatterbo the rest of the season, but I think he could easily be on your other list. So I'll hold off to not spoil a second guy on your other list potentially.
Is he a Jet?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just keep your mouth shut, brother.
But the thing, like, I hear you, and like in my brain, like I agree. It's like, yeah, this just cannot keep up because it's not like this is Malik Neighbors making big plays, moving them down the field. These are guys who I just do not expect to keep making big plays. Like, even though Jackson Dart's fun, has had plenty of nice moments, he's thrown to, Wan'Dale Robinson. And like, I like Theo Johnson, but I mean, come on, like not like he's a big play machine waiting to happen. Daniel Bellinger.
They had 2 40-yard touchdowns to their tight ends.
Well, one of them, did you see Theo Johnson's?
Yes.
It was, I think, just karma from the Broncos catching a touchdown also on a tip. So like in the moment of the game, it's like, okay, that just was the get back. But yeah, like Theo Johnson had the most ridiculous tipped catch that ended up in like a 40, 50-yard touchdown in that game.
Yeah, and you just put all that together, and that's not going to happen consistently. And I know the Broncos ended up winning it, but had they kind of played that game and the Giants would have been down by more scores, Cam Scatabo is likely getting less work while they're in catch-up mode.
Yeah, Giants cut a kicker because he's the reason they lost that game. The thing is, though, like, it just feels bad to bet against Cam Scatabo. Number one, to be frank, like, because he's so likable and just brings such a good energy to that team. Like, you can tell the vibes of that team have just completely changed from the recent New York Giants teams that we've come to know and loathe over the last 8 to 10 years. But the second reason too for me would be like, I am still a Tyrone Tracy believer. I'm also with you, like, a believer that I just don't know if the touchdowns are going to keep up, but he also does just get the ball all the time inside the 10-yard line, and he is a big, powerful guy. So maybe they can. It was just tough for me to know what to do, so I sat out. But props to you for taking a stand against fantasy football's most fun player.
Someone has to do it. I'll be the one to do it.
Naturally. Okay, my last negative regression candidate on the thumbnail, Quentin Johnston. A little bit tricky with this one. The Vikings and the Chargers are playing 45 minutes from this exact moment. It's funny. I did say Jamar Chase is probably going to score 30 points last week. He did quite literally exactly that. So maybe whatever I say is going to happen tonight. What I think is going to happen tonight, the Vikings run a ton of cover 2 up at the top or near the top in the NFL. The way Quentin Johnston wins is just does not really mesh with that. I think he's probably in for a tough game tonight. And that to me is just my issue with Quentin Johnston. I think he's improved. I also think the bigger thing for him this year, and we've talked about this a little bit, is just how improved the usage of him is this year. They are not asking him to do anything he's not good at. I mean, think of all the big Quentin Johnston plays this year. They all look the same, whether it's a deep or shallow cross. They are crossing routes where he's running away from somebody in man-to-man coverage. And a lot of times it's off blitzes. Like, I just think teams are going to, and they already kind of are, catching on to that with the Chargers. We've seen the last 2 weeks. He has 10 targets, 6 catches for 70 yards entering this Thursday night game tonight, and 1 touchdown over the last 2 weeks. Ladd McConkey, who's kind of the other half of this argument for me, 24 targets the last 2 weeks, 16 for 167 and a touchdown. I just think things are kind of starting to normalize a little bit in this receiver room. And I also think, like, as teams are kind of game planning to not just give up the deep and shallow crosses, Ladd McConkey is the most complete receiver in this room, and the guy that can win against the more schemed up looks that we're seeing to take away some of those easy buttons for the other role players in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. He's paced out at like the wide receiver 8 right now.
And he has 5 touchdowns in 6 games. That's just not going to keep up.
Yeah, and we're just going to go ahead and do both these because my regression candidate here is Keenan Allen, and some of the stats I was going to talk about with Keenan Allen are representative of Quentin Johnston as well. For Keenan Allen, last 3 games before last week were pretty bad. He was all in single-digit scoring. And then Justin Herbert drops back to throw 55 times in their game last week, which is not sustainable for any NFL quarterback. And both
– yeah, I mean, they were in comeback mode basically the whole second half.
Yeah, and both Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen were big-time beneficiaries of that in their total output. And it's just really not sustainable. Quentin Johnson is running like the third most 9 routes in the NFL right now. I don't see that continuing to keep up. And on the other side of it, Keenan Allen is receiving the most dump offs of any wide receiver I can possibly think of. He's getting so many shortened ends. So it's just this entire passing attack. I really don't have faith can continue to leverage itself this way. And I also think the best pass catcher in this group is still Lad McConkey, who mapped out to like 15 targets last week.
Yeah, I think it was 16. And they have a tight end that the people trademark the people are really in on right now. And I'm mostly with you on Keenan Allen. I think of the two, I mean, obviously of the two, I had my pick and I went with Quentin Johnston. I think they're both going to be usable receivers still the rest of the way. Like they've both built up enough equity. Keenan Allen over a very long stretch, and Quentin Johnston has played very well this year. And it's not like it's not like he's never going to catch a deeper shallow cross ever again. It's just maybe not going to happen as frequently. The thing that would give me a little more hope that Keenan Allen can somewhat keep this up would be that he just has such a chemistry with Herbert. And when they get in these scramble drills, which happens a lot, even with Joe Alt coming back tonight, it's probably going to keep happening a lot. This O-line is still very banged up. Herbert is a guy where Herbert knows exactly where he's at, and they have that connection. And Johnston, whether it is just not having that connection, he also still will have bonehead drops, and Keenan Allen does not do that. I just trust less of what's happening with him than Keenan Allen so far.
Yeah, and for both these guys, I do trust Quentin Johnson less. I think if I didn't tell you this, it's the same reason I didn't include DeAndre Swift. Is like it's one of the players we rag on so consistently. I feel like anybody who watches this would know we're telling to get rid of them. But both these guys are inside the top 14 in points per game.
Yeah.
And Keenan Allen, like I think 3 weeks ago, I told everybody that now was the time to trade him. And then he had 3 really bad weeks, all sub 5 points. And then he had a 23-point game. And I think you're back in that sell window where he regressed. And it was all thanks to a very high drop back rate from Justin Herbert in a game that they were behind in so often.
Yeah. And I think I even said after he had before this most recent game, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, it's like you're just kind of waiting for that next big game to hopefully get off him at a really high price. Okay. On to the positive regression guys, the guys who have underperformed, but there's just something there. There's something there that we think that they're going to turn it around and be in for a bigger second half of the season. I'll let you start us off this time, Dalton. Who is your first?
I'll leave the two you spoiled so our viewers can really wonder. But I have Jordan Love on here, which I believe you might have had.
He's on mine as well. Yeah.
Okay. So this one is just the entire situation around Green Bay is so weird because they might be the best team in football right now. And it's really hard when you watch them play an actual game, but they're just not putting all the pieces together. Among quarterbacks with at least 20 deep throws on the season, Jordan Love is charted with the third most accurate deep ball. In spite of that, he only has a 22% catch rate of passes of 20 yards down the field. And it's really not even been the wide receiver drops. It's just been really unfortunate plays. There's one in the Cleveland game where Matthew Golden runs an out route to the outside. He throws it to him, and the ball just lands maybe half an inch outside of Matthew Golden's hands. And it was at the 5-yard line. It would have been a 95-yard touchdown. There was no one in front of Matthew Golden, and no one would have caught him. So you put that in. Then this team is already really successful on the ground. They're third in the NFL in rushing success rate. And then all the stats you led off about Josh Jacobs last week. But their play action rate does not line up with that yet. But historically, this is a coaching staff that has run play action heavily. Last year, they were third in the NFL in play action rate. This year, they're much lower down the totem pole. And I think those things are going to change. And then they've just had some really odd games. The Cleveland game comes to mind. The tie with the Dallas Cowboys comes to mind. But despite all of this, Jordan Love is one of the few quarterbacks that is outside the top 15 in passing touchdowns, but has enough attempts to justify it. And as this offense starts to gel, as Jordan Reed comes back, I think they're going to get significantly better. So you put all those things together, and I think this is just a really undervalued quarterback right now.
Yeah, I actually went through because I was curious, and this ended up not being totally true, so I'm not going to use it to prove the point that I thought that I might be able to make. I was curious and just went through and looked at how long all the touchdown passes were and how long all of Josh Jacobs' rushing touchdowns were. And like, okay, is he hogging all of the inside the 5 touchdowns? That's not necessarily true. But what I did find is that the Packers have 4 passing touchdowns of 10 yards or more, actually 4 of 15 yards or more, none within 10 to 15 yards, all 15 or more. 2 of those came in week 1 with Jaden Reed active. I think one of those was to Jaden Reed. So he's been out since the very beginning of week 2. Him coming back will help. Christian Watson, we've always had our issues with, but it sounds like he's going to come back at some point. And he's still he is a perfectly fine receiver to help your NFL offense. So that will help the passing attack just kind of on the whole. And, you mentioned just how well Jordan Love is playing this year. I found these composite QB rankings from its SF Data Niners, and it has everything from QBR to EPA per play, completion over expected, air yards, a couple other stats along those lines, and just compiles all of those into an average. Jordan Love ranked 5th in the NFL and all of that. So he's playing very good football, but he's QB 16 in total and points per game, which he's had a bye, so I was surprised by that. But guys like Brock Purdy have only played 2 games and rank ahead of him. One thing that's holding him back, actually, he had 4 rushing touchdowns that 2023 season where he finished, I think, is QB6, QB5. He has 1 rushing touchdown in his last 21 regular season games, none this year. And I don't think he's going to all of a sudden rip off 5 rushing touchdowns down the stretch. But for a quarterback, the difference between QB 13 and QB 6 could be a couple rushing touchdowns. And he's a guy who is plenty mobile, not playing as injured as he was last season by any means. So I just would expect that to kind of regress a little bit. That plus the offense getting healthy, plus more play action. I just expect better days ahead from a fantasy perspective from Jordan Love, even if maybe Josh Jacobs is stealing all of his rushing touchdowns inside the 5, but there are going to be some pass plays where it just breaks down and he steps up into the pocket and scrambles for a touchdown. It will happen at some point this year.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is averaging more points per game from Jordan Love. Bo Nix is averaging a substantially amount more points per game than Jordan Love. Those are players he is playing better football than, for sure.
Yeah.
And I believe that the fantasy points will catch up to him playing better football.
Yeah.
Even some players technically Brock Purdy's in front of him. That's whatever. But Caleb Williams is a player. I think Jordan Love is playing better football than.
Yeah.
All of those are just he is playing good football. It's just not showing up in your fantasy scores, and you should stick with it or go get him if you're one of the people in QB hell. And I would bet whoever owns Jordan Love has probably gone out and gotten one of the other waiver wire quarterbacks at this point.
Yep. Bet on guys playing good football. Okay. Since that was also one of mine, Dalton, I'll let you go again.
Yeah. Which one did you want to talk about that you spoiled? I'll just go with Breece Hall.
You're the one that spoiled Breece. I held off.
So you even sent this tweet earlier, and I was going to bring it up, but Breece Hall among all running backs has 116 touches without a touchdown.
Yeah, and it's by far the most in the
It's
NFL.
by far the most by 100. To give you an idea, it's really unfortunate what's happening to Breece Hall, and it's really unfortunate that I'm going to say this sentence next. But I think that Tyrod Taylor could significantly help Breece Hall.
Dude, their owner saying hey, it'd look a lot better if we could complete a pass. That's almost verbatim what he said. That is just a wild thing.
Yeah,
happen.
Woody Johnson also came out and said, they asked how they felt about Aaron Glenn. He said, with a quarterback like that, everybody would have this record in the league. That is a wild thing to say about the player that you went out and signed this offseason
and gave him. Yeah, I was gonna say, and gave him a guaranteed money in his second year, which I don't think there was anybody competing with you for him to where you had to do that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. But the general thesis here is no matter how bad the Jets are, bet on good players, and Breece Hall is a top 5 player. I know Bijan Robinson is having an insane season. I still think on a per game basis, Breece Hall is maybe a little tick under what Bijan Robinson is currently doing. They are both incredibly talented players, and that is what you're kind of leveraging in the second half of the Jets 0-7 season that they figure out and they get him moving. Tyrod Taylor, obviously,
or he gets traded.
or he gets traded. I mean, that is an option here, and I would buy on that right now. Rumor from random Jets Twitter is he's worth a 5th-round pick in Kansas City. If you're looking, there's a great player. He has his lowest target per game of his career right now with the Jets, and that's because Justin Fields is simply not throwing the ball.
Yeah,
It's not even.
And he just he always scrambles instead of dumping down, and that's like Breece Hall, not just dump downs, but like legitimate catches downfield. He's been one of the best receiving running backs since he's entered the NFL.
Yes. Surprisingly, the Jets offensive line is ranked 13th in the NFL in run block rate and 16th in the NFL in pass block rate. And they've looked a lot worse. I really think Tyrod Taylor is not going to save their season, but he could make the offense moderately productive, which is all Breece Hall is really asking for. And you put that all together, he is way down in the RB rankings. Let me just look at what he is right now. He's RB23, which isn't that bad.
Yeah.
But you have guys like Jordan Mason, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins are all ahead of him, and he is just more talented than all of those players. Like wholesale, stop the presses. Ashton Jeanty is 10 spots above him. I think you could expect what Ashton Jeanty's current production is for Breece Hall. They're both on terrible offenses. Breece Hall has just run a little colder with it. So all in all, like I would be buying him up everywhere I can because he's going to be relatively cheap. I would trade a player in front of him, which Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and Quentin Johnston for Breece Hall, and that's probably a haul for the other player.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't hate that at all. Even though it's just been tragic for Breece, but there's no second running back of substance. Like Isaiah Davis is playing some, but not nearly as much as Braylon Allen was before. So like in that regard, things have broken right for Breece. It's just the offense has been such a travesty, and he has yet to score a touchdown. That will surely regress at least a little bit. My first one, I think we're going to disagree on this just because we usually do on Alvin Kamara, but I've got Alvin Kamara, and this one, you're going to be hard pressed to find data that's going to tell you, yes, Alvin Kamara is 100% going to bounce back.
You're gonna be hard pressed to find numbers behind this,
because like if you like all of like the advanced rush yards over expected, he's not doing well. But like I don't always buy into those as the be all end all. I just watched Alvin Kamara play still, and the way he moves, I'm like, that guy, he's probably not as good as he was in 2022. He is still really freaking good though, and it's been really bad. From a fantasy perspective, I think he's like not even an RB2 right now. And I just expect that to tick up a little bit. Kendre Miller is done for the year. I mean, I think we're both probably Devin Neal believers in here, but Kendre Miller the last 2 weeks was playing around 50% of the snaps. So I would be surprised if Devin Neal's doing that right off the bat. Maybe at some point. But I think you're going to have a runway where Kamara's playing, where he played 84% of the snaps after Kendre Miller got hurt the other day. And like, I get it. This team stinks. They're 1-6, but they do still move the ball sometimes. And Kamara, to me, still a pretty doggone good player. Like, I'm just going to bet on the talent here and bet on the price probably being so low on an old running back who's underperforming on a bad offense. Just think you can probably trade something you don't care about that much or don't believe in super long term and get a guy who I do think is going to be a RB2 type of guy for your team rest of season.
Alvin Kamara is in the most hilarious spot in fantasy points per game among running backs. It is the old heads that you were really hoping come back. It is Aaron Jones at 7.5 points, Alvin Kamara at 7.2, and Nick Chubb at 7.1 points per game.
Kamara is the one Aaron Jones has been hurt But like between Chubb and Kamara, like Kamara's the one that I just still think is good.
Yeah, I would rather believe that Alvin Kamara is going to be good than think that Nick Chubb's going to return the form. As a pass catcher, Alvin Kamara obviously has a little more upside that Nick Chubb really never had in his career. I mean, I don't hate the idea of buying low on Alvin Kamara. I don't love the
I was gonna
idea.
say it doesn't sound like you love it.
I like certainly if I was a good team and I was out there looking for some players who I could really make my roster get over the edge, Alvin Kamara wouldn't be my first choice or my second choice, but I can see the logic behind going after him.
I mean, yeah, I know Taysom Hill's back. He's gonna make you mad with the short yardage stuff, but Kamara has 1 touchdown in 7 games. That probably is not going to continue. He's on pace for a career low 60 targets over a 17-game pace. He's only ever had 1 season with fewer than 75 targets. I think he also missed like 3 or 4 games in the season to do that. So like kind of the same thing as Gibbs last week, where it's like, hey, can we get this guy the ball in space a little bit, please? Like he's this great pass catcher where the Saints post Sean Payton and Drew Brees just go through these stretches where they just don't throw him the ball. And I think we'll have a stretch where all of a sudden they are throwing him the ball a little bit. And then we'll go back to not throwing him the ball a little, like it just ebbs and flows for whatever reason in that way. Okay. Your next guy up, Dalton.
Well, we'll just stay in New Orleans here. Wow. No one saw this one coming. But I have Chris Olave. Couple of things here. One, do you know what his expected fantasy points per game would put him at in wide receivers?
I think it's like wide receiver 7. Is that right?
It's wide receiver 6.
Okay.
So you are very close. In spite of that, he's
should not surprise you. I am a pretty frequent viewer of Chris Olave's stats.
Despite all of that, he's the wide receiver 17 in points per game. Last week, he obviously had a blow-up game. We're getting the first look we've asked for like 3 years with Chris Olave, where he's running slants, he's running in breakers, he's not just running on the outside the entire game. He also has a quarterback that I don't think hates him. Looking at you, Derek Carr. In that, his ass score puts him at wide receiver 5. He's getting some of the most separation of anybody in the NFL. I'm not going to tell you here that Spencer Rattler is a world breaker and is going to immediately figure out how to handle that, because he won't. But I do trust Kellen Moore enough to be a good offensive coach who's going to continue to hammer in the meetings.
And the biggest difference the last 2 weeks, he has been more willing, Spencer Rattler, to throw the ball down the field. And Chris Olave has benefited big time from that.
Well, and if you look at wide receivers with first look target share, Chris Olave is 3rd in the NFL. And the reason for that is that this is Kellen Moore 101, same thing that happened with the Eagles and with the Cowboys. He's really big on RPOs. And Chris Olave is the first read out of those RPOs consistently. So eventually those plays are going to have some bigger pop moments where Chris Olave is getting free from the defense. And he hasn't really been able to do that till last week. I am really valuing him as a top 10 wide receiver. I think Evan and I have both continued to pound the drum for Chris Olave season over season, that he's a good player in a bad situation. But going through like some of the names above him, I'm going to leave Trey Tucker off the list because we know why he's there. I would prefer Olave over DK Metcalf. I would prefer him over Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, and probably not George Pickens, but like kind of over George Pickens. I know that's really tough to say because he even performed with CeeDee Lamb back in the lineup, but I really think Chris Olave is that caliber of player. And if they get even a little cleaner on offense, there's just a real ceiling to Chris Olave.
Yeah, no, I obviously 100% agree. And like I said, the A-dot lifting up a little bit and just Rattler being more willing to take some of these deep shots has been the difference the last 2 weeks, and him finally kind of making good on all of this volume he's been getting. Because like you look at every chart, it's like all these guys who are top 10 in fantasy points, and then Chris Olave, and he's moved up a lot closer now after 2 really good games. And we just had like the ultimate Chris Olave experience over the weekend where he went into the medical tent very early in the game. You're like, and if you start him, you're like, oh my God, I finally start this guy. He's in the tent with 0 points right now. And he came back and had like a 24-point day. So he might scare you from time to time with the health stuff. I think he's had an ankle, probably why he was in the tent, had an ankle this week he's been dealing with, but he's fine. He's fine. He's going to play. Yeah, like Chris Olave, amazing player, one of my favorites.
Well,
Hope this run continues for him.
and in my research, I did learn Chris Olave is a dog. Did you know his entire rookie season, he would wear a walking boot to games because his ankle was so messed up, play the entire game, and then leave in the walking boot consistently. He is a dog. And I know that's hard to say for a player who's missed so much time, but he is legitimately a guy who will actually play through injuries. The only injury you can't play through, because the NFL is a no fun league, is a concussion.
I was going to say, he happens to just have an unfortunate history of an injury that you cannot play through.
You got to go to a doctor. It's absurd.
Yeah, the whole thing. Although, you know, some people, when they get a concussion, don't always follow all the advice of
well, if Brian Dabble was Chris Olave's coach, he would just go into the medical tent and pull him out when you get a concussion like he did with Scatteroo.
Could be traded. Could end up being his coach. That would be a funny thing to have happen after that. Okay, last guy. This is kind of low-hanging fruit, but this just happens. I feel like we forget about guys if we, you know, in sports, if it's been weeks or months or whatever, like they just haven't done much. I think Zay Flowers is falling into that category right now. Obviously starts the season with a boom, 25-point game on prime time, whole world's watching it, and then just hasn't done a ton since. He's had a couple passable performances. I think with Lamar the next week, he had an 11-point game, had a very bad 2.3-point game where it was like comical how far off Lamar and Zay Flowers were in that game. But then 10.9 against the Chiefs, and that was obviously 3 quarters with Lamar, but then 9.7 and 5.6 without him. And I just think that if we'd had Lamar healthy this whole season, I think Zay Flowers is probably a guy that we're talking about as like a top 12 to 15 fantasy receiver. And Lamar seems like he's playing this week. I think we were pretty quickly going to get back to discussing Zay Flowers in that manner. I mean, you think about last year, yes, he was inconsistent, and he may have some 3-point games every now and then. Honestly, almost everybody does. But the main thing that was an issue for him was they would just roll over these teams, and they wouldn't have to throw the ball. Like, I remember a game against Buffalo last year where Henry had like 200 yards, and like, well, Zay Flowers, they scored 40 points, but Zay Flowers had 4 targets because they threw the ball 15 times. Like, I find that hard to believe we're going to get that version of Baltimore because the defense, I just don't think is going to allow that to happen. I think this is a team that might be Cowboys of the AFC West down the stretch until this defense gets a little healthier, but they're never going to be healthy enough to where I feel confident in them being a good defense, I don't think, the rest of the way. And I just think Zay Flowers, you know, really good player, can get open on all 3 levels, 30% target share, really good after the catch. Also has gotten better the last couple of years in the freelance, kind of being in the spot that Lamar expects him to when he scrambles. I think you've seen that portion of his game and their connection grow. Like, career best yards per route run this year. That's even without Lamar. The last couple of weeks, he's 2.31 for the season. And I think with Lamar, he's like 2.5, which would be wide receiver 5 in yards per route run this year. So this is a guy who, not quite the JSN leap, but he was, I think, about ready to make a like 85% JSN leap, and it just got interrupted. I think we're going to get back to that now that Lamar is back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, obviously with Lamar being out, you had Cooper Rush in there who was abysmal for them. On top of that, this is a team where is Derrick Henry maybe just a tiny little bit washed. Feel like I did this 3 years ago. But I think we might finally be to the point where it's not prime Derrick Henry. It's harder for him to play in the games because their defense is so atrocious. And they're a team that is going to need to frequently pass the ball. And their passing offense has some chops. I mean, they've put up the most points of any team against the Cleveland Browns, which is one of the best defenses in the NFL. You add just the factor that Zay Flowers is really the only weapon that Lamar can trust consistently other than Justice Hill. That receiving room is pretty murky. You have aged DeAndre Hopkins. You have the UNC wide receiver from last year who has drop problems. Not Tez Johnson, but no, it is Tez Walker.
Yeah, Tez Walker.
And obviously, Derrick Henry doesn't have any pass catching upside.
I
So
mean, Rashad Bateman, hello.
yeah, I think he might be dead, Evan. That's one we got to give up on. So all in all, like Zay Flowers is in a pretty good spot to smash as soon as Lamar Jackson is back, especially because it's fun to target high-powered offenses with terrible defenses. Look at what George Pickens has done. I don't think George Pickens holistically is much better than Zay Flowers. They have different skill sets and are entirely different players.
I actually think Zay Flowers is probably a much better NFL receiver than George Pickens.
Okay, that is a wild statement right now for anybody who's looking at just points per game.
But
I wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm just talking like just like football. Like if I were picking a wide receiver to put on my football team, I'm picking Zay Flowers over George Pickens every time.
Yes. I would most likely agree with you, but I don't want the group to go too far.
Okay, Dalton, anything else to add before we hop out of here?
No, I'm going to go talk to my NFL guy about who's going to get miraculously injured and bet their player props under this evening.
I already told you, Quentin Johnston under whatever his reception prop is. Trust.
Are you in with the Italian Mafia too?
I have a joke to tell you offline after this. Okay, that's going to do it for episode 184 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube at Half Point Per Podcast. The link, as always, to all of those things will be in the show notes. As always, thank you all so much for listening today. Leave us a 5-star review, Spotify, Apple, etc. We will be back and talk about whatever is about ready to happen this week. We'll be back.